Every time that we go through a workshop or course, or even some one-on-one, people want to know if they're in the right relationship with our values. Um, or we get questions like, "Am I doing this right? Like, how do I know if I'm actually living in integrity with my values?" So we decided that we should probably do a podcast about it, and also bring it in as a Zoom Q&A to try and spark some more conversations around this. So I think it might be nice to start off with us talking about what living in integrity with our values actually means to each other, because that might be a little bit different. For me, living in integrity means that I'm aware of my values and knowing that they aren't always going to be satisfied at the same time. There's going to be some that are going to be in conflict depending on the decision or situation that I'm in. And so being able to acknowledge it and making the decision for myself to say, I recognize that my value of peace is going to be frustrated when I'm going to go out and connect with my friends, but my value of connection, which is much higher on my top five values, that's going to be met. So in that regard, I am okay with that frustrated value being there, knowing full well that I'll be able to satisfy it in another way. So with that, I'm able to live within integrity of my values because I'm still making decisions based on what is the most prevalent, relevant, and most important to me at that specific time.
Absolutely. As long as we know what they are and have that negotiation with ourselves about, like, in this moment, which are at play, which are being satisfied, which are being frustrated. I think that's exactly what we're looking for is like that combination of delightful self awareness, knowing ourselves, like going to our user manual or Corrine and being like, check, check, check. These are the things that are important to me when I go through life. They get frustrated easy, they get satisfied easy. And these are my common players. And then using those as the lens through which I look at the world and these micro choices and these big examples and being like, did I move closer to or further from in each of these situations? And for me, I'm going past that self-observation, which is absolutely the first place to start. In that situation that I'm either in or just past or recently past, which were satisfied, which were frustrated. And now I'm looking, which is important, accepting which were frustrated and satisfied, and then also looking at what is my contribution to having them be satisfied and frustrated. And that's like a deeper level. So we're going past the casual observing of what is happening into now going deeper. And there's also deeper layers in this, but the deeper layer of how am I contributing to that value being satisfied and frustrated, and not just being how is the situation or the people around me, how am I contributing to these values being satisfied or frustrated? And that is a key piece of how I can be in integrity, because it's the funniest thing that I have the most span of control over me, and I am at the whim of others. I can't control them and I can't control the situations, but I get to decide how I do. I do me. So that's a little bit more where my little path of like exploration is at. Gavin, did you want to add in anything about how do you know that you are living in authenticity or in integrity with your values? And you always get to opt in or out. You always get to say, no, I'm good.
I will perhaps opt in at this point. Um, I don't know if I really do know when I am. I'm just learning that myself. But one of the beautiful things I heard on a political podcast that I listened to was someone who was talking about their values in a political context. And when one value doesn't get satisfied there, it doesn't mean it's not important. And he talks about that in the context of people saying that, here's an example of your hypocrisy. You said that was important, but you made this decision and that. So he says that I'm going to have to go revisit that podcast because he did a beautiful job of talking about it's important, but it didn't carry the day. And that was just kind of the message that I'm trying to internalize here. So
Right. And that's a really interesting piece because we are walking contradictions every darn day, every minute. And to be like, does that mean I'm not in integrity? Does that mean I'm not in integrity? Yeah, exactly. Um, and so the more we understand the way our behavior is being impacted by it, or the way our well-being is impacted by this choice versus that choice, and how it's connected to, did I walk closer to or further from? How open am I to accepting hypocrisy within of myself? How okay am I with not meeting all of my needs or prioritizing these needs over the other? And so, how do we metabolize that contradiction, that conflict inside? And really, the only way we can do it is by being aware of it. First of all, self awareness, and then moving to acceptance of, like, I'm a contradiction. I am hypocritical sometimes. And that is normal and okay. And having somebody judge me because of that is far less important to me than being aware that I have that I'm a human being full of gray spaces. Things are today in this moment that seemed important. Tomorrow in that moment, I will choose something different because I get to do that.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Can I jump in? I just have like a burning question now. So I know we've talked about in our last podcast episode about living in integrity with our values internally, but I kind of have this feeling of going more towards like what does this look like when we're dealing with the outside world? How do we remain within our integrity while we have conflicts with other people or contradictions with other people's values?
Absolutely. And it's no good if it only works within our own selves. If we're like, I'm super in in integrity as long as I never leave my house and I never talk to another human, flawless. This is so good. But
I'm
also,
an expert.
yeah, exactly. In those cases, I am an expert. And then we have to go to work. And then we have kids, we have families, we have parents, we have friends. And they're not going to line up perfectly. And I think a really lovely way of talking about this is understanding the difference between, like, I want to sort of move this towards like standards of behavior for ourselves. And this is connected to boundaries, but this is more about expectations that we have for ourselves. And are we living up to those expectations of ourselves in those messy situations? And a really lovely way of understanding this is looking at the drama triangle. And there's a couple of, even if you just Google drama triangle, we'll see if we can drop a link in the meeting notes, whatever that's called, to talk about the drama triangle. And it's really looking at how do you react when somebody else gives you the ick, or when somebody causes you to have conflict with your own values. And then how do you stay in integrity with your values, even when they're pushing your buttons, tap dancing on your levers, like, I don't know why tap dancing on levers, you know what I mean. Karina mixing her metaphors again, as usual. So how are you staying in integrity? So there's, on this drama triangle, is really looking at where is this victim, villain, and the hero in this. I'm holding up my hands to make a little triangle in this process. And you can't have drama without the triangle. And so you have to have a victim, you have to have a villain, you have to have a hero. And where do you land in conflict on that so that you can understand that you're on the triangle, I'm the victim. People are being so mean to me. They're pushing my boundaries. They're telling me when I should do things or trying to control me and things of that victim mentality. I am being done to, and we should feel sorry for me. Whereas the story then becomes they are the bad guys. They are doing this to me. They are the villains. They have a twirly little mustache because they know what my values are and they know that they're doing this on purpose. And then we have heroes that have to come in and be part of this, like, I'm going to be, they can show up saying, this guy is the good guy, this guy's the bad guy. And that hero can be like who they want to center themselves around to be like, tell me what's right, come and fix the problem, do the right thing. And so when we have those pieces, we have a drama triangle. And that is problematic because as soon as you have a drama triangle, you have drama. And now you're just fighting for who's the victim, who's the villain, and you're trying to trade this experience. I'm the victim has a power behind it. Because when you're the villain, you get to be judged and taken down a peg. And the problem also is it gives me permission when I can solidly identify as the victim. I give myself permission to treat you like a villain. Give myself permission to denigrate you, gossip about you, to come out and tell you my truth without leaving space for you're a human being because I put you on that villain role. That's a whole lot that I've just shared. So I'm just going to take a second, and Christina or Gavin, you can sort of jump in there with how did I do explaining that?
No, I think you did a really good job with it. And it sounds like it should, or it seems like it should sound easy. Um, but it's actually fairly complex. So as you had mentioned, as the victim, you might say some things like, I don't have enough time. There's nothing I can do. This is so hard. Um, and that essentially you're making yourself seem like you're helpless and you have no other way out. And as a villain, you can either blame yourself or others. You'd say things like, "It's my fault. You're wrong. Who's to blame in this situation? Nobody's going to let us do what we want to do." And then the hero comes and sweeps in and takes temporary relief by giving sympathy, saying, "Poor you, I know how hard this is for you, or it'll be okay. Let me take over." And in the sense of values, whether it's internally or externally, believe it or not, it's so easy to fall victim to, "Oh, well, I know I really value peace, but I don't want to lose my friendship, so I'm just going to allow myself to be in an uncomfortable position." And that's the first and foremost rule of living integrity with your values is to never allow yourself to be in an uncomfortable situation or force somebody else to be in an uncomfortable situation as well. So regardless if you have conflicting values, you have to acknowledge them and see how you can what's the word here? See if you can be in that situation and de-escalate some of those tensions to make sure that it is comfortable both for yourself and for the other person. It could be walking away. It could be, chatting about them and seeing if you can find that mutual respect, mutual boundary, or find like a give and take. And I don't know if that's making sense to anybody. It totally makes sense in my head. But but realistically, again, like you are the only person that can be in self-control of your own values, and it is also your responsibility to make sure that you are in a safe position to be able to live in integrity with your values. And it's not about whether another person isn't letting you, or if somebody is like, going, yeah, I'm in your corner, I'm being your cheerleader, and you need to do you, and screw those other people. That's not that's not healthy either. So it's important to understand and grasp that drama triangle in order to understand how to deal in these external situations. Gavin, do you have any thoughts about that?
I I have this book that I fully intend to read on compromise and rotten compromises. It's meant in a political context, and I think what attracted me was the summary that just says, in any negotiations, you don't get everything that you want, but how do you determine a compromise that gets you some of what you want, gets you closer, versus a rotten compromise that just someone benefits at your expense. So I think that's kind of the same sort of thing that we're trying to figure out here is how do I identify, how do we accept that we don't always get everything that we want, but how do we know when the compromise is good versus bad? And I think that that's not something we as humans are naturally set up to just intrinsically know. So yes, I like the struggling conversation to figure this out.
Truly, truly. And I think the piece about how we live in integrity is very much how we behave when we are in conflict, rather than how we expect others to behave when we're in conflict. And so, what I really want to pay attention to is one, first of all, the drama triangle doesn't exist. And as soon as you find yourself in a space where you're identifying as a victim, or you're using language that's around victim language, or using language around villain language, they're the bad guys, and trying to convince other people that they're the bad guys, especially if you're trying to convince that hero they're the bad guy, you are evoking the drama triangle, and you need to stop. You need to understand that this is a construct that Disney has pushed toward us. Not to blame Disney. Let's go to, Hans Christian Andersen, all of it. But notice that you're in it, and then notice that you can take yourself out of it, that there are no victims, there are no villains. This is about, okay, now I'm in a power struggle, is what you're actually sort of recognizing. And how do I move away from trying to control or dominate, or make that other person do something, versus how do I know that regardless of how they behave, regardless of the situation, I am going to act in integrity with my values. I'm going to advocate for my values. I'm going to hold assertive space for a conversation about my values. And like Christina was saying, that leaves space for that other person to also be a human that has their own values that they're also allowed to advocate for. So, how do I move myself off of that? And how do I make sure that when I am looking at my behavior? So, for a great example, and I come back to this one a lot because it's a very strong influence in my life, and it's my value of non judgment. So when I am recognizing that my value of non judgment is jammed up, usually I'm looking at how somebody else did it. How did they judge me? And what am I going to do about it? How am I going to demand that they stop judging me? How am I going to hold them to account? How am I going to expose the situation? And how am I going to take control of the power in this power dynamic? And that's important to recognize, and it's important to know that you're in a power dynamic, power struggle. And then how do you move back into values-based conversation? So what is the value that's being jammed up? How are they jamming it up? This is all based on the VBL journal. How are they jamming it up? This is quiet reflection. What did they do that I didn't, that jammed up my values? Which of my values got jammed up by them? How is the situation contributing? And then the most important piece, how did I contribute to jamming up my values in this situation? So when I'm in a power struggle with somebody, very likely my value of non judgment is being activated by my behavior because I am judging them always, right? They did this, they did that, the situation did that, those contributing factors. And it's okay that I do that because judging is normal. Being judgmental jams me up because I raised me better than that. I raised me not to be petty in my judgment. But there's moving it more into how do I move from judgment into discernment? Okay, Karine, you know this, you got this. How do I decide where they're not a bad person, but they're making choices that are impacting me? That's the difference between judgment and discernment. Not how are they a bad person? How are they a villain? How are they, what is it that they're doing that is impacting me? Okay. And so I need to shift my mind, my thinking. How am I showing up for them that isn't judging them? How do I communicate in a way that is not accusatory or putting them down, shutting down their power, cutting off their access to individual power in this power struggle? How am I not dominating their power? How do we equalize and say, I am going to hold space for me and hold space for you at the same time? Let's have that discussion together because we have we can find that common ground that we actually both want to talk about. This is about roles and responsibilities with a coworker. This is about making decisions together as parents. This isn't about how you're a bad parent. I'm a great parent. This isn't about how you're a controlling coworker and I'm just a poor little getting pushed around coworker. What is this really about? And that's being like really mature and honest with ourselves, because it's more fun to get stuck in this like, let's turn the team against that person because they're shutting me down. That's fun. This is about how are we going to figure out who takes the lead on this initiative and what makes the most sense, not how am I going to be picked for this next initiative to lead. So I'm just going to put a little pin in that and just open it up for comment again.
I think that's a perfect opportunity to then discuss those boundaries and standards and expectations and all the big hairy things that we don't often like to talk about because it takes a lot of work to do so. But they are very, very necessary if you want to move forward in a positive and constructive manner, whether it's work or parenthood or friendships, anywhere, really.
Absolutely. And this is it's a difficult thing to talk about and a difficult thing, but it's the piece that's missing. So for example, I know that when I behave in a way that's outside my values, when I am showing up lacking courage, when I am being courageous, being saying the thing that doesn't get me that just needs to be said. That's really important to me and important to my identity, that that's the kind of person I am. And when I don't do that, I have a really difficult time. I've got the anxiety, I've got the internal spiral, and what my brain is doing is it knows that it's under attack, and I want to blame it on somebody else. I want to project that onto somebody else. They did that to me. The situation is not built for me. And there can be truth in that. But the thing that's actually distressing me the most is that I am acting out of integrity with my value of courage. And I need to find a way to satisfy that value. But first, I need to be like, okay, courage, this might not be your time to shine. Right? Like, what is the situation? What is being called for here? Why am I not being courageous? Where can I be compassionate with myself for not choosing courage? Where can I find little ways to be courageous in this space to shift it? It's like my internal self, my unconscious mind is always watching, and she's more interested in what Corrine does than what they do. It matters, like on a bell curve, like that matters. I don't think that's the right way to put it, but it matters more. It counts more than when somebody else does it. But I don't know how to see it when I do it. I don't know how to acknowledge it, that I'm not doing it, but I know how to project it onto others. That's easy. And not like, haha, I'm lazy, but like it's just a more normal pattern of thought. And now I'm asking you, us all, me, to open our minds up to say, Corrine, it's okay that you're not being courageous here. It doesn't mean that you're bad. It doesn't mean that you're chicken shit. It just means that maybe that's not called for. But let's have a look at why you're not doing this.
I definitely think that you have like you're showcasing a lot of kindness toward yourself when you're having these conversations, which is really important. It's really easy to again place yourself as the victim and beat yourself up and say like I could have done better. I messed up and and then you kind of spiral into I'm not good enough or having that imposter syndrome. I often face that in my managerial role at work. As a parent, that guilt is just always super heavy. Um, and I'll just give an example. The other week, I was stuck in a meeting, lost track of time, showed up 15 minutes late to pick my daughter up to go to gymnastics or cheer. And she's just like, Mom, why do you care more about work than me? And I was just like, oh, that just broke my heart. And this is the very first time that I've ever been late for anything. And and so it would have been really easy to say like, man, you're right. I shouldn't care a lot about work. Like I should put you first and yada yada yada. But I took that moment and I was able to really talk to her about it and say, it's not, this is not about you and it's not about work. It's just I oftentimes lose track of time because I'm so focused. And we're only human, not perfect. But what's important is I showed up. And that is what you need to realize because not everybody shows up all the time. And that was like my ability to show kindness to myself. Like, yes, I understand I messed up. I told her that we were late and I needed to get your boots on, get your coat on, and let's get like we need to go. Um, and it turned out to be fine. Missed a little bit of routine, but she was able to jump right in there like she never missed out on anything. But like oftentimes I feel like we as individuals, because we have such a uh, busy social life or just a busy life in general, that we aren't as nice to ourselves as possible. And we feel like, well, actually, I know like society kind of just breeds us to be able to take on everything. And there's this weird invisible expectation that we need to be perfect with everything too. And that's not the case. Like we all have the same amount of time in a day. It didn't change, 50, 100 years ago. It's still the same amount of time, but we just so often jam pack our schedules and we're running on high stress. And when we mess up, it's a big deal, but it really isn't. And we have to give ourselves grace for that.
Wow, that's beautiful. And what a great opportunity to do the work in real time and model it for your daughter, because she is going to experience this in her future. And the more frequent little exposures that she can get to, yeah, and it's okay. Like, not like, no, I'm not late, or it was your fault, or it's like, just, yeah, that happened. It's like that in that radical acceptance space. That happened. And now we have a consequence. We gotta like bust our little bustles. Um, and it's okay. We can work with this. And it was okay. What a beautiful experience that you had with her. Yeah, exactly. Like that's not a golf clap. That's like she should do a cheer for that. And one day she will, right? She'll do a backflip for that. She doesn't understand it yet, but she will. And what you're really like looking at is radical acceptance. Like in that moment, that happened. And this coming back to what you were saying earlier, Christina, about being able to balance which values get satisfied and frustrated. It's just a nonstop negotiation, nonstop. And like for example, in the example I was talking about where I'm lacking courage, I can demonstrate love because that's a top value for me. And most of us have something in our value set around love. And when that love isn't extended to ourselves, you better believe your internal self notices. Even if we don't have that external, like that awareness that I noticed, that doesn't change that it got noticed. Inside Kareen saw what you did there. Inside Kareen saw like that unconscious me um, noticed that I beat myself up or threw myself under the bus or chose not to be loving to myself, chose to judge myself. Why would I do that? But it's understanding it's not just one to the lack of involvement of the others. They're all at play, whether you're aware of them or not. They are driving their your motivation, your motivational systems. They're driving the bus. They're dictating what thoughts you have, what emotions you have, and what actions you take. So you may as well bring them into awareness and have conversations with them. Courageous Kareen didn't show up today, and that's okay. But I'm going to really satisfy love. Love Kareen is going to be really satisfied. Or non-judgment. Kareen is going to be really satisfied. And she's also going to notice that she is holding herself to account. I don't know why I'm getting weirded out by referring to myself in the third person now. Did it get weird? and and noticing that these are important when we project our what we are doing to frustrate ourselves onto other people. It's I don't even know how to describe that. That is like now I have this word chicken shit in my head. It's like a way of squirming out of it, a way of not standing in our internal power. And then we were seeking external power to shore that up because we feel it, but we can't explain it. We don't know why it's happening, why I feel so powerless. And it has so much less to do about what that person did. It has everything to do with what I did to abdicate responsibility for myself, my actions, internally and externally, what I think, how I'm, beating myself up or whatever that thing is, and how I, so if I hold myself and say, if I start acting like now that she's, for example, jam me up, bets are off. I get to be unkind, unprofessional. I get to be sarcastic. I get to lambaste them. I get to throw them under the bus. I get to do what I think that they did to me. I get permission. I've given myself permission to do to them. And these are all of the things that just happen in a fraction of an instant. And that is when we actually start acting like the villain, but we hold the space of the victim. And that's weird. And it is so normal and it happens all the time. And it happens without us even noticing that we're doing it.
So I just want to take a moment to extract exactly what Karina has been mentioning. She's been essentially talking about two things, standards and boundaries. So standards are the expectations that we have for ourselves and how we behave. Our standards are can be assertive when we are aware of what expectations we have for our values, how they should be met by our own behavior. And then we have boundaries that follow. So boundaries are the expectations that we have for others and how they behave. They can be assertive when they're being connected to a value and when there's a clearly stated expectation for that value to be met.
Totally. We have a little image that we use in the assertive communication workshop. It's in the workbook. And it's sort of a visual of the difference between the two, which I kind of enjoy because both of them are expectations, exactly how Christina said it. And the standards are the expectations you have for yourself, and the boundaries are the expectations you have for others. And they're both values-based expectations if you're like living in integrity with your values. So if you want to see exactly how you understand your thoughts and expectations that you have for yourself and for others, and the more energy thought that you put behind what do I expect for me, and that can be also because I value courage or kindness, I'm going to extend that kindness to others. Or because I value kindness, I'm going to stand up when somebody is unkind to me. And that's a standard that I have for myself. It can also be a boundary where I will let somebody know that that's unkind and I value kindness and I need you to show up for with kindness. But they get to choose if they do or not. That's how you know it's a boundary. But the expectation that I have that I will always say when somebody is being unkind to me or when something feels unkind, I need you to know that kindness is important and I'm not feeling it right now. And because I value kindness, I'm going to extend kindness to you regardless of what kind of idiot you show up as. That's the part you don't say out loud. Right? But I will show you kindness. I will demonstrate compassion, but you're not going to walk on me. You're not going to get away without me calling it out. You're not going to get away with, I won't be uncomfortable because you want to treat me with unkindness. I need to advocate for my value of kindness or respect or dignity, however that value lines up for you. And I will offer and say, if you continue to show up with setting the stage where I don't have dignity in this conversation, or or you're choosing to be disrespectful, I will exit this conversation. That's a boundary for you. But before I get there, I have an expectation that my standard for standing up and naming it, advocating for it, even if I can't force that other person to change their behavior, I can absolutely let them know that they are jamming me up. This feels really unkind. This feels like we've left disrespect, or this where you are choosing disrespect over respect. And I want to say that to you respectfully. I'm going to say that to your face. I'm not going to say it behind your back. I'm going to describe it neutrally without it being, and that, therefore, I've found the evidence that you are a total see you next Tuesday. That is a really important, and I appreciate the slowing it down right there, Christina, because I think this is really unique to VBL stuff. We have a lot of conversation in our psychology world, in our workplace conversations world, conflict resolution world, for how to create boundaries for others, and they're often around like how to like make them for what, like it's evolving now into like it has to be what you're not going to stand for, but they're not necessarily anchored in values in the way that we do it. And they both have to be values based standards, and the standards have to come first. They have to be thoroughly explored, thoroughly met. You have to stand in integrity with your values, because you're going to jam yourself up regardless of what. They could be like the most perfect human being, but if you're not showing up, then they can't show up. You're still going to be frustrated, and you're going to be frustrated 10 times more than what they're doing to you.
Right.
Yeah.
And like you said too, we have to make sure that we're considering and addressing our own standards and the fact that we are showing up, that our values are being met with our own behavior, because then we can weed out the fact of whether our problems are based on our own behavior or if it's in fact because of another person's behavior, right? We oftentimes, like you had mentioned earlier, a lot of our problems are based on because we're not living in integrity with our own values. It's not because Joe Blow's an idiot. Um, it's because we didn't meet the standard in which we set ourselves. We didn't satisfy the values that come up to play during the situation, and we need to solve the problem ourselves and have that step back before we can talk about setting boundaries with other people.
Absolutely. And we have to be so careful in this process that we don't accidentally victim blame, where we're taking all, like, especially for those of us that have a predisposition to hyper responsibility, that we're not over accentuating that this is all of my problem and all of mine to fix. It has to be, I need to explore and deeply understand it. And that neutralizes the triggers before I go in and call um, Sarah Joe. Sarah Joe. Oh my God, brain. Sarah, let's say Randy. Where I go and call Randy out, but I need to have understand myself first before I can go in there before. And that changes the way I show up with him. It changes the way uh, where he triggers me, and I actually have an unconscious reaction to guilt of where he says, you didn't do the thing. And I haven't explored that I actually am distressed that I didn't do the thing. But if I have done that exploration and said, I didn't do that thing, and I don't think I was safe to do that thing. I did that thing, I didn't do that thing, maybe I forgot, and that's okay. That radical acceptance, all of that internal thing neutralizes my trigger. So when I go and talk to Randy and he's like, you didn't do the thing. And I say, yeah, I didn't do the thing. And he's like, you didn't do the thing. Yeah, I didn't do the thing. But you didn't do the thing. I didn't. I didn't do the thing. And let me talk about why I didn't do that thing, because I have some internal processing of what happened there for me. Let's just talk about that. You didn't create safe space. I needed that safe space to be able to be courageous to do the thing. I didn't do the thing. I need you to know that I am overworked. I'm competing priorities here and I'm really struggling. But when I walk into that conversation, I need to not be triggered. I need to not be scared that Randy said the one thing that I was so scared that he would say. Because I haven't processed it. I haven't given myself acceptance over the thing, not doing the thing. This is really
It's so
important.
powerful. It is so powerful when you're able to bring yourself into that space.
How does it change the power dynamic for you, Christina? What's your experience there?
Um, it really shows or it's proven to have de-escalated many situations. You know, as especially in employment, you know, I'm the boss of 6 employees, and you know, it's not my responsibility to be people's friends, although I do treat my staff with compassion and understanding and collaboration. there's still sometimes where it's, I'm faced with a, you're not hearing me. I'm not, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, I do hear you. And here's some insights as to what else I have to also hear before I can make a decision. And just having those conversations, and we always leave it on a positive note, right? It's a, wow, I didn't understand that. Like, thanks for taking the time and walking me through it. And for me too, it's a nice learning because I'm not always privy to what's going on all the time. So it's nice to understand from their perspective what their reality is based on their perceptions or assumptions, and then we have a conversation about assumptions. And before it gets to that triggering point for them, come talk to me, talk, if you're building a story in your head, ask me if it's true. Seek that validation. And so after those conversations, I feel like our relationships are a little bit stronger. We're working on that mutual benefit, that mutual trust. And even though, oftentimes people come in hot and they do that finger wagging and you, and everything is wrong in the world. Having the ability to take yourself out of the equation in a sense where like you're taking that emotion out, and showing up for yourself, and that radical acceptance, like, you're right, I didn't make my decision based on the only thing that you stated. In fact, I took what you said and what this person said and whatever the best interest of the organization is and our finances, and this is how I came to a decision. Thanks for asking. And it's really a powerful tool when you know how to perform it.
That is amazing. It's amazing example. And it's a little bit too where you're describing how to be tough on the problem and not the people. And that includes yourself. And that's sometimes the part that doesn't get said, like, and not the people, including yourself. Oof, I love it. You are such an amazing human. We all are. We're such amazing humans. We're trying so fucking hard. We
Hmm.
are working so hard to be, I don't want to say good people because that seems like a lowercase version of what we're doing here. But it's about, really working hard to know ourselves, trust ourselves, and being people that other people can interact with safely. And that's a fucking huge thing to do. And it's like I said, a lowercase thing, like that sounds like a big deal. That's a big, hairy deal. And I love that we're trying so hard to do that because it matters. Like if we want to move it into like karmically, it matters that we're not doing harm. It matters karmically that we're not doing harm to ourselves. It matters that we're not doing harm to others. It matters that we're making decisions in a way that lets ourselves and others show up in a way that is useful, kind, respectful, holds dignity. And I want to also add another piece in here of what you said, Christina. You allow them in this example that you shared to change without going back on their values. You allow them to like learn new information without it being like, and that is why you're wrong. Right? Do you know what I mean? Let me tell you why I made the decision I made, and let me convince you why I'm right and you're wrong. And you're doing that too by you're saying, like, here's the decision I made, right or wrong. This is the decision that was made, and here's what went into it. It's not about being right or wrong. And that is an example of you taking yourself off the drama triangle. There's no like exact right answer, there's no exact wrong answer, but there are answers. And here's the decision I got to. Here's how I got there. Do you understand my process? You understand that I'm the decision maker, right? And I brought in your perspectives, but I brought in others' perspectives. and the decision was made. And I may change that decision in the future with a different piece of information or a different time where there's other factors at play.
Hmm.
That you are
Absolutely.
living it, that integrity and action in those examples.
Yeah, it is difficult sometimes though, because I can't speak for everybody. For myself though, I've been working on not being a people pleaser, right? And not being taking responsibility of something that's not actually my responsibility, and apologizing for something that I shouldn't actually apologize for, because I've made a decision based on thoroughly analyzing all of the factors or all the information, right? And yet, when somebody still says, "You hurt me," I'm so inclined to say, "I'm sorry."
Yeah.
And I know that's just a very normal trigger. It's that fight or flight mode. And but being able to just have the conversation preliminary with myself, I often talk to myself in a mirror.
Me too. When I need an expert opinion, I always talk to myself.
Always, yeah. Yeah, and it's really nice to be able to do that, and yeah, practice on yourself, because oftentimes I'll catch myself like, don't apologize. No, that's not we're not talking about fault. We're talking about a decision, and we're acknowledging that it hurt you. We're acknowledging, that maybe there was a lack of information, and how can we move forward? And it's humanizing, because we both can be vulnerable in that space. And as you had mentioned, Karina, I really believe that we create that safe space so that people just are more inclined to come and have those gritting conversations and that blaminess to come to us, because they know that we'll diffuse it and we'll allow them that opportunity to see a little bit clearly after they walk away.
Beautiful examples. This is all ways that we live in integrity with our values. There's no right or wrong way to do it. And we know that there are some ways that we can create some guidelines. We in the assertive based communication, we have some formulas, we have some skills that we can practice, and we have some concepts that we can understand about how we can show up in these spaces, how we can behave, how we can work with ourselves and work with others. And it's a practice. Like, we've been going at this for a while, and it's easier each time, and then you go a level deeper, and we're just always practicing and trying to be more in integrity with our values. It's a beautiful experience. It's well worth it, and I think it's a lifelong endeavor that I'm not going to give up on. And I encourage each of you to also consider how much more beautiful this world is when we are satisfying our own values, when we are showing up for ourselves, when we are creating safe space for others to also show up for themselves in the way that they need to too. It's really dang cool. Any closing thoughts from Christina or Gavin?
Nope, just thank you. This is tying into a bunch of things that I've dealt with recently or am going through. So yeah, I think what you were talking about there at the end about being a beautiful thing. I heard someone, another podcast I follow, she said that every time, no matter how close we are to someone or how much we respect them, we're going to have conflict and boundaries being crossed. And you don't find the people that don't cross your boundaries. You find the people that respect and can work out when your boundaries have been crossed. And the idea of putting yourself out there and addressing it, not as a power move, but as can we solve this? And we go away, no matter what, you get to go away with better information about, is this a person that I can work with on this? In which case, great. And is this a person that we end up closer with afterwards? usually the case if you can do that well. So that allowed me the grace of just setting aside the whole power dynamic you were talking about, Corrine, and I found that very useful. Just step outside the drama triangle. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. This is good work. Okay, well, let's close there. And thank each of you for your time, showing up, trying our little best. Good work, team. All right, thanks. Talk to you later.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for letting me be a part of this.
Thank you for being
Thanks for
here.
coming.